All right, so Elisabeth. An overview summary of her. She's an elegant, multifaceted finesse character with a number of tools to deal with a lot of situations. She's also able to flip the switch between space control and pressure mix-up very easily, thanks to her unique set of buttons that she's got. And it's also backed by strong second position damage. Her damage mostly comes from just your, standard close, strong confirms. So, if you're near the corner, you get a lot of stuff from this. And if you're out of the corner, then you can still get some decent damage. So let's go ahead and go over her normals. Her cr.A is standard poke there. It's honestly pretty slow for a cr.A, but it still does its job in terms of stuffing hops. Use this preemptively if your opponent's jumping at you, similar to how you use other characters' cr normals. Her cr.B is very good, very long reaching. It's even on hit. I believe it's slightly minus on block. But the important part about this is that it's special cancelable. You can go into DP, the light DP, and that's a combo. So if you do your standard light confirm, you can do that. And that's a decent confirm. You'll want to use this to check opponents on the ground. It's definitely not suited for the air. And also the other problem with it is that it extends your hurtbox a lot more than the hitbox. So do be careful about trading unfavorably. Her cr.C is this move. It's very strong actually. It's cancelable on whiff, unlike her cr.B. And it also gives you a lot of time to cancel it on hit. Whoops, that was close. C. There we go. Gives you a lot of time to cancel it just in case. So if you're a bit far than you'd want to be, then you can cancel into your move of choice. You can also use this for max mode buffers, but it's not as good as cr.D. Speaking of which, let's talk about cr.D. cr.D is, it looks like this. Has a little bit of low invincibility. I believe it's also super cancelable. So if you're a good player that can confirm from that, you can definitely go into supers. Like so. You'll also use this for max mode buffers. This is a lot better than cr.C because it just reaches farther. But do be careful because on whiff is pretty poor. And also on block, I believe it is safe, but it's not. You're not left in a great position because you move forward a little bit. Okay, it's not safe. So do be careful on block because you can't cancel it into specials on block or anything like that. Make sure to space that if you want to be safe. But it's good for maximum buffers, for whiff punishing, and for footsies. Alright, close normals. Close A looks like this. You can use it sometimes in strings, but it's not generally that useful. The problem with it is that it just pushes her too far to be able to do much off of it, so you won't be using it, generally speaking. But sure, you can definitely use it to hit your opponent out of their jump if you're that close, but you probably wanted cr.A anyway if you're trying to do that. Now, a nice thing to note about her normals when you hit your opponent out of the air is that her super has anywhere juggle properties. So if you air reset them in this manner, you can actually confirm from it. It's only useful if it kills though, because it's not the best way to spend meter necessarily. But if it does kill, then it's worth it, of course. So that's kind of how cr.A can be used. Oh, sorry, close A. Close B, again, not that useful. The proximity is poor. It leaves you with not much to be able to do afterwards. Now the nice thing is that at least you can do it multiple times up close if it hits, but if it's blocked, you actually cannot do it multiple times. You can only do it once. So it's not actually as useful as it might seem, but it technically is plus, so it can allow for some frame traps that you can kind of freestyle. You can do this into something safe. All right, and then close C. This is her best normal for your combos. It's most reliable because of the proximity. It's similar. It's basically universal. That the proximity moves are tied to cl.C, and the punish moves are tied to cl.D because the cl.D does more damage than cl.C. But as you can see, cl.D doesn't trigger from as far, so you do want to be careful about that. The nice thing about cl.C is it's because it has far range, it goes into your command normal very easily, and you can also cancel it super late. Like, you can definitely, like, if you're like unsure, you can cancel it so late and still have the ability to combo from it. Oops, that's not the combo. Something like that, right? So that's what cl.C is used for. Off a jump in, same thing. And then cl.D, as I just mentioned, you use this for punishes because it does more damage, but also the proximity isn't as far, so you do want to be careful about using it. But generally speaking, if you block a DP, you know, cl.D probably will be far-reaching enough. Just do be careful sometimes. Otherwise, it's not that useful. Okay. Now for a crouch normal. So cr.B is the first one I'll talk about because it's her most important crouch normal. Now, sadly, due to the universal cr.B nerfs, it's probably not as good to repeat it 3 times as it used to be, but it's still, you know, because Elisabeth's cr.B is actually cancelable into specials, unlike some other characters, and you can actually combo into specials proper. This is still very good. And this is what allows for her very basic hit confirm. I missed it there, but you guys get the deal. That's her basic hit confirm if you have meter, the 1 bar to spend afterwards. Otherwise, you can just end that. So because it's cancelable, it's kind of your just, you know, comfort, I'm not thinking too much sort of pressure move. If you want to be a little bit more fancy with it, then you can do this as your string, which still is basically the same thing because it just does a little more damage because it doesn't have the 15 damage that crouch light kicks have, and it still allows you to cancel into specials. Speaking of which, let's talk about our cr.A. The cr.A is very good. It actually reaches pretty far and allows you to use it 3 times, even if you use a cr.B before it on hit. Now the problem is that on block, you'll notice how it pushes you out a little too far for it to be useful in this regard. You see how you can only get 1 cr.A to hit afterwards, and you see I can't get 3 cr.As either. So generally not as good. You just want to do 2 or 1 on block. That way you can still retain the plus frames, unlike cr.B, which is actually a minus. So cr.A does have its purpose, and it also goes into far B, so it still allows you to hit confirm. So yeah, it's still pretty good. Okay, and then next is cr.C. This is your standard anti-air. It's got a lot better of a hitbox than it looks, but it's also prone to trading slightly. So you do have to be a bit precise with your timing. But it is a great anti-air for its purposes. It's not the best, but it does the job. Certainly Vanessa has a better one though, because it's more active. So you do have to time it, as I mentioned. But as I mentioned with the Fare and cl.A as well, if you manage to be good at hit confirming, then you can go into her level 1 super off of this for an anywhere double. This also happens to have pretty decent horizontal reach for a cr.C, especially compared to how it looks. It's kind of weird, but anyway. cr.D. cr.D is her sweep. It's honestly not a good sweep. It's poor range, it's poor startup, it's poor recovery. It cancels on touch, but on whiff you'll notice that it does not cancel, or it does cancel. My mistake. So at least it does have that going for it. So generally speaking, you pretty much always want to make it safe by canceling it. But you see how even at this spacing, I can't get this move to actually connect, which means that I'm punishable by canceling at that spacing. But I'm still punishable at this spacing. It's just that it's harder to punish because they're pushed far back. So you can use this for frame traps. That's not really the best frame trap because it pushes you so far. But if you do something like, you know, crouch A, crouch D, that's a decent frame trap. But again, her sweep is just not the best necessarily. It's still a sweep though. Nothing like Vanessa's. All right, and then her air normals. Okay, let's talk about st.CD real quick though. St.CD looks like this. It's similar to her st.D in terms of its poking utility, but st.CD is honestly better for Elisabeth because one thing you'll start to notice with this move is that you actually have time to no cancel it, dash up, and get a confirm. So that's not something a lot of characters can necessarily say they've got. So you can get away with no canceling this. The problem with no canceling it is that on block, it's a little bit minus. It's actually not punishable compared to most st.CDs on block. So you can literally just throw this out, and then if it hits, then you don't even need to cancel it. Of course you can if you want to build a little meter, but I mean, this is a great asset to have. It's got a decent hitbox. Sadly, it doesn't cover jumps too well compared to especially Vanessa's jump CD. So you do have to make sure your opponent is on the ground for it to be as effective. But it's still a pretty good jump CD, and the fact that we're able to confirm from it rather easily is certainly something that is worth using for it. Okay, so for her jump normals, we've got jump A. It's a pretty decent air-to-air if they're above you, but you're not going to be using this too much. But it is her best air-to-air, strictly speaking, because of its speed and the zone of coverage for being above her and a little bit in front of her. And as mentioned with these other normals, if you hit them in the air, you can combo from it with her anywhere double super. All right, and then on to j.B. j.B is a very short range move, but it's deceptive. This move is insane for cross-ups. I'm not sure if they've since nerfed the cross-up hitbox. Okay, there we go. No, it's still just as good. But this move is crazy for cross-ups. You do have to time it. You can't just press it, unlike like Shermie or some other characters who have good cross-ups. But it's extremely easy to use from full jumps, hops if they're crouching. Let me get Kula to crouch. This is super easy from crouch. Again, you do have to be at the right spacing, but still really good. And of course, you can combo from it rather easily as well. Okay, and then j.C. So j.C. is this move. This is your go-to jump in when you're close to them already. It's also your go-to jump in for like just frame advantage other than j.CD. If you need a quick move to get some frame advantage on your jump in, then j.C. is the way to go. Just because j.D. has a little bit less frame advantage on block, at least at the same respective heights. So that's j.C. Good for hot pressure, and you know, you can do a string like that or something. This is actually a really good hitbox as well, even for air-to-airs, but for it to be good as an air-to-air, they have to be kind of in front of you. They can't really be above you, like with j.A. I mean, they can, but like, yeah, you see how it whiffs when she's above me. But you can use it as like a rising move because it is decently fast. And then j.D. j.D. is probably the button you'll be pressing the most. It's not necessarily her best button, but it's definitely the button that allows you to play footsies and cover zones without too much effort. pretty active, decently fast. It also functions as a good jump in just because it has that slight downward angle. But do be careful when you time it, because against crouching opponents, it might whiff depending on how soon you pressed it. As you can see there, it whiffed against the crouching opponent. And I forgot to mention this about far.C. Far.C whiffs on crouching opponents, so be careful about that. But yeah, anyway, if you use jump D, you got to do it a little late to hit crouching opponents. So if you want to hit crouching opponents consistently, you probably want to use j.C. Even j.C can whiff on crouching opponents if you do it too early. But it's not too hard to time it a little bit later. Alright, and then finally jump CD. Elisabeth's jump CD got nerfed by the patch slightly. It used to be, I think, 15 frames, and now it's 17, something abominable like that. It's kind of slow. It used to be actually very good, or it's still good, because you can do it immediately out of your hop, and it'll still connect for full frame advantage. In fact, that's probably a buff of it being a bit slower now. But this is good for some standard KOF hop pressure in the corner. Sadly, in terms of neutral, this move won't catch opponents as often just because it's so downward angled, and you'll get beaten by a good majority of the jump CDs in the game if you use this in neutral. But if you happen to press it early enough and your opponent comes towards you, this is still a good hitbox to throw out, just to make sure that if they do come near that area, like underneath you, then they'll get hit. Or if they come in at the angle while you're like full jumping, then they'll get hit by her foot right there. So it's not bad for those situations, but it's still pretty slow. So you have to be, again, as I mentioned with the overview, you do have to be quite particularly finessed with this move in order to make it good. But perhaps the startup nerf actually helped it a little bit, because you can use it immediately out of the hop and it'll still connect. Thanks also to that downward angle. Okay, that's her normals. Let's go ahead and talk about her throw. So for her throw, it's not really too much about it. You get the standard safe jump like every other character does off of throw. And for that, I just did a manual run into hyper hop j.B. You can do other jump normals as well. Her back throw is like this. You also get a safe jump. Some characters actually do not get a safe jump off of their back throw, so this is something worth noting, to be honest. I think the safe jump timing is hyper jump. Okay. I think it is hyper jump, but you can't do it right away or something. But yeah, anyway, you do get a safe jump off of back throw, which is, you know, better than average. So definitely make use of her throws, because they're pretty good. Alright, now for her specials. So, or command normals first. So she has only one command normal in this game. She's got st.A. This move doesn't really do anything. It's just for combos. You can delay it a lot from cl.C, which is sort of a frame trap. Now keep in mind, it is slightly minus on block, and it also doesn't reach super far. So do be careful how late you cancel it. But the nice thing about this move is that it actually juggles on airborne opponents. Unlike, I mean, I think some other command normals also do this, but this is what allows for her deadly combos when you spend a little bit of meter. You know, standard stuff like that. So that's what you want to be using it for, just to make confirms easier. You can frame trap, as I mentioned, and then you can also just throw it out raw, which allows you to cancel it, I believe. But it has to touch. It cannot be canceled on whiff raw because it's not a normal. But yeah, that's really about it for st.A. Now for the rest of her specials. So first we've got 236A. Her move names are French, so I don't want to confuse you guys with move names. I think you're probably confused by the Vanessa move names already, so that's no need to confuse you guys further. But first she's got 226A, which is her fireball. It's a really ghetto fireball. It's not that great. It negates projectiles. It can, you know, because it has a lot of durability, it can actually sometimes just outright beat them. But the problem is it doesn't travel super far. So your generally usage for this is to just space the opponent. I like doing this in the corner just to keep my opponent jailed just a bit. Oops. You can do that, right? But of course there's a gap between that string, so do be careful. You can also do Farsi into this, but if you want to make it like a bit more proper, you got to do the heavy version, which goes a bit faster. It also ends at a different point. I think they both have the same recovery just about, so it's not really too different other than where it ends up. So let's talk about the EX version, because this is the one that's the most interesting in my opinion. It's only active at the end. Yeah. So sadly, you know, you can't. It's not like a good fireball. It's just a, you know, it's just active at the end, sadly. But let me see. I do believe it stays out even if Elisabeth gets hit. So that does allow you to trade a bit favorably in some situations, but it's not always like that. I believe there are also some setups where you can actually get this to hit meaty after some of your moves. Like, let's say you end like at some spacing like that, then you can do that as a meaty. It's not like Oki like Guilty Gear, but it's at least a meaty, so it's still a little cool. It's hard to do, but it's like technically something you can do. Let me see. I don't remember any of the setups though. Something like that, probably. Yeah, I don't remember. That's definitely something worth exploring, you guys, if you want to, you know, develop some Elisabeth style. She definitely has those things that can be experimented with. Her EX one is the one that's interesting because it got changed in the patch. Basically, she does two. She does the first and the second, which is just the weak version and the strong version. And the cool thing about this one that they changed in the patch is that if you input it direction back or forward, you can actually change where they end up. You got to hold it to make sure that it actually does what you want. So you see how it goes farther when I hold forward, and then when I hold neutral, it doesn't go as far. Hold forward, and then hold backward. It's like two in the same spot. So you can also use those for setups. You can also use them to just create an active projectile hitbox, just in case your opponent jumps into you. Again, remember that these stay out even if Elisabeth gets hit. It's just kind of weird to use this move though, because it doesn't really help you for combos, and for neutral it's surprisingly useless. But because of the new behavior change in this patch, you can use it for guard crush pressure. I've seen on Twitter a couple people use this when their opponent's close to being guard crushed, but it's also sort of a waste of meter still, because generally when you'll have Elisabeth on your team, you want to just get some efficient 1.5 bar damage. So spending the EXs on EX Fireball is not always advisable. Okay, and then, okay, so I guess one thing maybe that is good to mention about the EX Fireball before we move on. I think it reaches. It doesn't reach. Wow, it's terrible. Yeah, I don't even think. Yeah, maybe in the corner, but I was gonna say like this combos. Okay, it does combo if you do it a little earlier combos. Yeah, it doesn't combo as easily as one would want. But anyway, next is their DP move. This is not an actual DP, guys. This is just on the DP input. Just for combos, really. Has no invincibility whatsoever. You know, it's decently fast, but it's not DP fast at all. So just use this for combos. Don't use it in any other situation. You might get just clipped out of it. It's punishable on block. Both of the versions are. The A version is generally going to launch them a bit farther. And the C version launches them a bit higher, which allows for the A version to link into it. So you can do C version into A version. And then if you want to combo even further, you can do the EX version afterwards, which is also not invincible. It's just nice for extra juggles, and you get stuff like that. So that's her DP. There's really not much to say about it otherwise. It's just for combos pretty much. I guess the other thing that's worth mentioning, if you want to use the light version in combos, the light version cancels from her lights. So if you do the string that I mentioned earlier, you can combo from lights like so. Oops. And if you want to combo from heavies with the DP, you can just do heavy normals. So, oops. But you guys get the point. Basically, the heavy DP combos from heavies, the light DP combos from lights. And then the EX one. Oh, I already mentioned the EX one. Okay, so next up on our move list is quarter circle back A. This is just a poke. It's technically punishable on block, but the spacing it leaves you at, since it's only -5 on block, the spacing it leaves you at is very hard to punish. So this is generally your just safe stuff ender for pressure strings and for confirms, because it also is super cancelable and leads into your standard ender mid screen or corner. So if you want to play Elisabeth like a little, like, you know, if you want to play Elisabeth without thinking too much, then, you know, you can just do that all day. The heavy version of this move is plus on block, as you see up there. It's +2 to be exact, and on hit it's a hard knockdown. Now unfortunately this move used to be an overhead, and I'll demonstrate that it is no longer an overhead. As you can see, they can block crouching. That was changed in the most recent patch. But because of this hard knockdown, you can get either a cross-up setup or a safe jump, your choice. I believe it's harder to get the cross-up nowadays because they nerfed her j.B at one patch. I don't remember for sure. I remember it being easier though, that's for sure. But basically, that you can get a cross-up j.B from landing this move. There we go. Yeah, it's a bit harder than it used to be. If you also do this mid combo, which yes you can, it allows you to get some more flexible knockdown afterwards, which is really cool, because that is what allows you to you know, further pressure your opponent afterwards. The EX version is an overhead. It's very fast, but it's also it's 16 frames to be exact, so that's extremely fast. But it also doesn't lead to anything, so you know you're gonna get blown away, and it honestly doesn't even do that much damage. Oops, it honestly doesn't do that much damage. So you'd use this if you want a way to cheese your opponent out, finish them off. You know, you can still cancel it from other stuff. You know, you can trick them out with this, but you know, the startup is actually slightly nerfed, so it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still good, still hard to react to. Do be careful though, because that is not a true block string right here, so they can technically roll out of that, I believe, and you'll be in a bit of trouble. All right, next is her reflector. So her reflector is quarter circle back B or D. The light reflector and the heavy reflector are both head invincible on frame 1. And they're only, the thing is, they're only, actually, I should say it better. Strictly speaking, it's full body invincible against non-projectile air moves. So if they do an air move, then this move will beat it. It's not necessarily head invincible because they can still like hit you on the ground, but in the air you can use this as an anti-air. Super minus on block. This thing is like, it's like -30 or something. It's like super minus. So yeah, it's like her DP basically. I wouldn't use it like a DP, but you can leave it like a DP basically. If you see them jumping, you can use this to anti-air. And it'll anti-air pretty consistently. In fact, if you happen to anti-air them, oops, I put them on guard. Hold on, there we go. What the? Okay. Oh, there we go. That's so weird. So you can anti-air them like that. It's really good for that. And you can even super cancel it if you happen to be good at hit confirming. But the super cancel timing is not super generous, so you have to like do it basically right away. I can't even get it right now. There we go. So that can be done, but you pretty much got to do it right away. It's hard to confirm. So do practice that if you want to make that as part of your Elisabeth arsenal. In terms of other properties of this move, since it's a reflector, it negates projectiles. The B version, let me just go ahead and switch Kula off for Athena. Where's Athena? Okay, so the B version negates projectiles, and the D version sends the projectile back. So it's just your standard run-of-the-mill reflector, aside from the other properties as aforementioned. It's also part of combos. It's a huge part of our combos, in fact. The EX version launches them upwards, which gives you so much time to combo if you want to do some fancy stuff afterwards. You can still use the EX version for reflecting, but the problem is that it doesn't have upper body invincibility if you use the EX version, so you can't use the EX version like that and then combo from it. Unfortunately, they're like, nope, you can't do that. All right, and then finally, the best for last, her counters. So she's got a couple of counters. They're all mapped to quarter circle forward, B or D. The exact differences are a little bit hard to describe, but basically they have both the same frame data, and they will both counter highs and mids. The thing is, depending on which version you use, that'll determine where she ends up afterwards. So the B version will end up at about that distance, and then the D version, oops, I did it too late because there is a bit of startup on this. The D version ends up a little bit farther away from them. Usually you want to use the B version of the counter because you end up closer to them and allows you to potentially combo them, punish them. It's hard to punish though because the duration is so long, and depending on what you counter, you might not be able to have enough time to actually punish, but you at least get plus frames. That's definitely a guarantee. The EX version counters basically everything except for throws, so that includes lows. Oops, I did the wrong version. How do I do this well? It's pretty hard. There we go. And you see you can punish that one. So the EX version definitely nice to still be able to do. So going low is the counterplay. Yes, that's correct. Going low to the counters is the counterplay. But if they do the EX version, then that'll be lows as well. And also the recovery is much short. The recovery is not shorter, but generally speaking, you have an easier opportunity to punish them than the regular versions. So make use of this counter as ways of kind of freezing your opponent, making them second guess their movements and attacks. Because a lot of people like throwing out their buttons in neutral to control space, but you can make use of this if you catch a jump CD or a jump C, for example. Then you'll be able to, since they're in the air, you'll be more likely to punish them. Let me see if that's so. Oops. So I did the wrong version, but as you can see, since they're still stuck in the air, you'll be able to punish them on the way back down. Oops, I took too much time with that, but... So in that case, actually, because the recovery on it's too long, you don't get to punish them in that situation, but a lot of times, if you end up catching them doing an unsafe move in the air, then you can punish them on the way back down. But most cases, as you saw here, you just get plus frames, so unfortunately, you don't get much else. That's all for her specials, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about her supers, which are very important, especially for combos and punishes. So her first super, cortical forward A or C, is this super. Basically, the A version is okay. All of these versions are invincible, but basically, the weaker version has less invincibility than the stronger versions. And both of the level 1 versions are invincible only up to the active frame. So they're not invincible in the active frames. Basically, they're invincible up to the very last startup frame. So unfortunately, that means it's rather easy to safe jump, and you still might trade. So it's not the DP that it might sound like, sadly. But it technically does have a lot of invincibility. So you might just be able to go through some things that are on the ground. If they throw out some unsafe thing, then you can punish them with like the C version if it catches them soon enough. But because the C version has a lot of startup, in fact, it's 21 frame startup, it's a little bit harder to do so. Oh, okay. My apologies. So actually, both of these versions do have invincibility frames during some of the active frames. So my apologies. I read this frame data wrong. So you can actually use this as a DP. But again, because the startup for the C version is long, you'll mainly be using the C version for combos. Because after you cancel from 214A, that goes into the C version of that pretty smoothly. And you have time to run up. You might have time to do a frame kill, build some meter, and then do a safe jump. I just haven't tried it out myself. Oh, okay, it looks like you do not. But essentially, you can figure out your safe jump from here. You know, do your little jump, and then you're jumping. And the A version is probably better for using as a DP just because it's a little faster. But it doesn't reach as far, so keep that in mind. And then the EX version. The EX version is basically halfway between both of these. But the nice thing about the EX version is that on the very last hit, there's this little bubble. And that bubble has a surprising amount of range that catches some people that want to try to whiff punish this. If for some reason you messed up when you were using this. But the EX version also does 1 billion damage. You generally want to use the EX version if you know it's going to kill. Because it allows you a lot of additional damage there. Alright, and then the other super she has is quarter circle back, half circle forward, A or C. This is her famous anywhere juggle, and the C version basically goes full screen. It's pretty crazy. This allows you to punish a lot of stuff out of nowhere. The problem, and actually the A version goes full screen as well. The problem with this move is that it's not invincible basically at all. It has only a little bit of invincible frames, but it's not invincible enough to make it worth using as a DP. This is mainly your long range punisher and your closer because you can use it after air resets or after random air hits as a way of closing it out against the opponent or just simply getting a knockdown. So a lot of people like doing air j.A into this, and then you still have time to do your Oki. And then you can also do what was the other thing I was gonna mention? I think it's from combos, but basically you can do, oh yeah, okay, I know what I was gonna show. So after your combo, you can end with like cl.C into this super, and it gives you a bunch of damage. That was a 2-bar combo that built back half a bar, and that did 591 damage, which is a lot of damage for 2 bars. So that's where it's useful as well. If you don't spend that bar on that super, then you just end with cl.C into whatever you want as a frame kill. Okay, so that's that super. Then her last super is Climax. Her Climax is surprisingly easy to combo with. It's got a really big hitbox. Of course, it's not full screen or anything, but like if you're right next to them, and or if you anti-air with it because it technically is a DP, then you'll be able to catch them. It's also easy to combo with, and it looks sick. Typically, if you put her in the second position or third position, you'll have access to a very easy but effective 3-bar combo that uses level 1 into level 3. So that would look something like this. Oh, whoops. So this is a very simple 3-bar combo you can use. Again, works only in second or third position. Decent amount of damage for 3 bars. And I believe you get a save jump off the climax as well, so good to know for those of you that are nerds. Like me. Okay, that's about it for Elisabeth, just so you guys have a basic idea of how to form game plans with her. Make use of her good air pokes such as j.D. and j.CD if you use it a bit earlier in your jump to kind of force opponents out of your zone. That way you can control the space and also flip the switch. Elisabeth, one thing about her is that she's very good at flipping the switch because her jump arcs are all run-of-the-mill. They cover all the necessary spaces. That's her hyper hop, her normal jump. Look at how far it goes. Her hyper jump goes decently far as well. And you pair that with her JD, it provides you some awesome control of the space. So you can oftentimes just keep opponents out of your zones. Now, you also want to make use of the reflector as an anti-air because that gets your opponent scared to death, especially if you're also able to hit confirm it into her numerous supers. The other important thing for structuring her pressure, she can be played as a safe pressure character, or you can start messing around with her, little thing like this, or you can use her EX meter on the overhead. It's really up to you. She doesn't have crazy mix-ups or anything, but if you just play standard fundamental KOF with her, she's very effective at that. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a command grab in this game anymore like she used to have, so you won't be able to be using that. But you make use of a normal throw, it's still good enough. Last but not least, she's got extremely high damage if you put her in her second position. She does need a little bit of meter for that damage to come, but the good part is that if you have that meter available, then you'll always be converting for huge points of damage to scare your opponent in simple interactions such as a straight crouch B. I love doing straight crouch B into this because it really scares the opponent. If I can hit it. There we go. Straight crouch B into that because, sometimes you always just do this because it's safe anyway. And if you catch them with that crouch B and you're able to hit confirm into the super, then it makes you that much more scary. That's pretty much it. Again, she's pretty basic. I think she's very easy to pick up. You might notice though that she's kind of hard to be creative with, and that's because her tools are relatively limited. So you do have to just make sure to master using them, each in their own respective situations. All right. I guess one quick combo. I mean, you guys have kind of already seen the basic combos, but that's a really good combo to get you a long ways with this character. Let's see. There's also this. It's a bit harder, but you get rewarded with a little bit more damage. Half a bar. And then from heavies, that's your half a bar combo from heavies. You can spend meter at any point during that to either get the ender or extend with half a bar EXs just a little bit as well. Oops. Something like that, right? And then, of course, don't forget to make use of her Anywhere Juggle Super as well. If you manage to get random air hits, and you can also use it as an advanced cancel from her level 1 super like that. It's still pretty good for frame advantage and damage, but also it's just fine enough to end with this because you still keep your meter for the necessary half bar conversions. So where do I suggest playing this character? I suggest playing her mid or anchor. She's very good reward anchor. She's not the highest damaging character anchor, but she still has plenty of things to write home about in her tool set with regards to reward, safety, stability, which all are things that matter in my opinion. But against other anchors, she might struggle a bit just because her buttons aren't as ignorant. In those regards, you still have to be pretty judicious in how you use them. But she's still rewarded with some excellent damage and some uniquely, elegant tools. And obviously, she's stylish, as it always goes. That's all for Elisabeth. Any questions you guys have? In this case, I just tap. Do you have any questions? Okay, for sure. I will pause the recording here then and move on finally to Leona. Aw, dang. Okay. Yeah, don't worry. You can catch the bot. No worries.